Alright, so first, a little bit about Slayer the skill. What is it? Slayer is a skill that allows you to kill monsters that otherwise may be untargetable, and you go to a Slayer Master simply like this dude, you get assigned a task to go kill some ugly things like this, and then you get experience. That is it. At a nutshell, many of the tasks are going to give you Slayer points, and with these points you can block tasks, skip tasks, unlock new tasks, and more gear, and it's a great overall moneymaker of a skill, and so for sure is worth exploring. And finally, as you can tell by this clip behind me, is yeah, you can even get access to crazy monsters like this. So let's dive into our Slayer Master list. Alright, so with that, let's dive into the very first Slayer Master on our list, Turiel. So he's this little bloke over here, and a little bit about this guy is that first off, he lives in Birthrope. So this is the beginning of the member land, so to speak. If you are a non-member that has been playing for a while or even just a little bit, you probably already know this location. You know, you are staring through that gate, wanting to hop the fence, so to speak, or I should say castle wall, and explore this land. For me as a kid, it was something that I was very excited about. But yeah, if you are new to OSRS, new to RuneScape, then you might not really be familiar with where Birthrope is. So essentially, you know, head northwest of Lumbridge or west of Varrock. You'll find it on your little mini map there pretty easily. And again, as a member, you can just walk right into this area, and there he is. You can also know by identifying on the map the little Slayer icon, and it makes it easy to go and find pretty much any of the masters. And so with that being said, Turiel for sure gives the easiest tasks in the game. We won't be going into everyone's tasks that they all assign, but I think the most noteworthy thing of his tasks is that, like, Sour Hogs, for example, have recently been removed as of, I believe, May 2024 or March 2024. And so, like, that was one of the last few tasks that was challenging for him. And even then, you can only get assigned that once you have completed a quest. You would make the argument, you know, and cough, cough, those cave crawlers, like Jagex, if you're listening, I personally would love to see them removed from Turiel's list, or just have an easy access of anti-poisons more readily available, because these things are simply unkillable without anti-poison or without you being a higher level. So beyond that, yeah, tasks super easy, lives in Birthrope. As we've already discussed Slayer points, I won't be saying a lot other than the fact that he obviously does not assign us any. He's one of the 2 Slayer Masters that doesn't. And yeah, the one other thing about him is that Turiel is someone you can use to skip a task. So I don't think we've talked about it much at this point. Essentially, if you're further down this list and you get assigned some crazy tasks that you don't want to do, then you can simply go back to Turiel and say, yo man, I don't want to do this. And he'll be like, I got you. He'll give you an easier assignment. Again, as long as it is an assignment that he's not already able to offer. Like if you get skeletons from Ashner, you can't go to Turiel and reset that because he also assigns skeletons. So it's a great feature, but it's also a feature that early on you should use this to take advantage of it, but honestly in the long run you obviously do not want to, because it does break your task streak. So we'll get a little bit into this more later, but essentially the more tasks you complete in a row without having to cancel them with Turiel, then you continue on a streak and you'll be able to get more and more points. And Slayer points really do matter a lot, again, as we've already said earlier. So I would just say that yes, he does offer this, but I'd honestly call it as negative as much of a plus. You definitely, want to be careful. If you're not careful, you can accidentally break a streak that you have built a long time building. And yeah, I would honestly say that more or less wraps him up. The last thing I'm going to say that factors into our ranking is that, yeah, he's not exactly like super cool looking. He's just wearing some pretty basic armor. He's got a little halberd, and he's in an okay location, easy enough to get to. So all things considered, personally, I know it sounds like I might have said a lot of positive, but for me, he's going in the F tier. Love me or hate it for it. I know some of you love this guy, but for me personally, I am so excited to be done with him with my SlayerLOCKED Iron Man account. And yeah, let's honestly move on to the next person. All right, so next up we have Spria. Some fun things about her is she's actually the daughter of Turiel. And this is another random fun fact, but I believe it was 2020 that she was added in the Portion of Interest quest. Ironically, in RuneScape 3, she has been in that game since '08. When, spoilers for that game, she replaces her father as Slayer Master in Barthrobe once he dies on a certain quest that may or may not be coming to OSRS in the near future. So we might not be seeing much of our good friend Turiel for much longer is my guess, but I could be completely wrong on that. So for Spria, she is able to assign, and that's why I did mention them earlier, the Sour Hogs, and as we throw them up on the screen. And the Sour Hogs, honestly, is one of the best early game assignments that you can get. And really, I would just say this was such a great add by Jagex because it really starts to introduce you in Slayer to the idea that you need to bring items or equipment to go and kill these monsters. Some monsters, as we'll talk about later, are actually just unable to be killed altogether without being on an assignment. And so, although yes, like Turiel does have monsters like this, first one to come to mind is lizards, which require you to bring like this little like ice salt thing that you throw on them when they're weak. You will just simply die to these things if you are not wearing these goggles, and they'll like spit on you. I definitely did not lose a hardcore Iron Man, sadly, to these Sour Hogs. So yeah, she gives slightly better, literally the exact same tasks as Turiel, except for the Sour Hogs. And if you ever wish to kill them, she is now the only person who can assign these to you. So it's definitely a good reason to go and get her unlocked and go do that quest. I would say as well with Spria is that I love her location. She's in Draenor Village. Again, maybe this is just a preference, but Turiel, you have to go to this land that you're maybe not as familiar with. It's also a little bit harder to get to until you start getting some teleports. While like for our good friend Spria, like you literally just walk southwest of Lumbridge and you'll be there in no time. I think people are very, very familiar with the area because of chopping willow trees or perhaps even fishing over there, or Draenor Village, a manor. So rather like it's just a very much more beginner friendly area. It's a great place to have access to Slayer. But I do also understand that, of course, Turiel's got that classic factor. She also just looks way cooler as well. So again, maybe I'm biased, but I would just have to say that for her, we're going to be putting her in the C tier, that she is all in all just the better version of Turiel. She provides you access to a better task. Her weighting's the same. She just also does not give us any Slayer points. So again, she is quite literally the same as Turiel in that way. Perhaps the only reason why I would hesitate and maybe move her down into the same tier is for the fact that unlike Turiel, who can actually reassign or give you a new assignment, if like one of these later people give you again a task that you just don't want to do or unable to do, she can't do that. Turiel is the only one who can break your streak and reassign a task. So he does have that, but again, like generally speaking, any task you get, you should be able to do later on by any of these masters, as long as you're not putting yourself in a bad situation or if you are a locked account. So for most normal players watching this, like just again, all things considered, Spria is just better in every way than Turiel. I would highly encourage you to get access to that quest as soon as you can. Really the only reason not to is, yeah, those pigs do pack a punch. And like, so if you're a hardcore Iron Man like myself, or you're just stupid like myself, it's maybe the only reason why you would want to hold off on doing her quest, the Portion of Interest. But yeah, hands down a C tier. I would even argue in some ways we could move her up to B because she is just a very great intro Slayer Master. And yeah, that's about all of that. Let's move on. All right, man, next is the man, the myth, the legend, the demon, Mashner. I've been finally saying this thing's name right after who knows how long calling it Mashner or Masner. And again, maybe I'm even still wrong, but Mashner is what we're going with. Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. I have no idea. They even sounded it out on the wiki, so I think Mashner's right. Anywho, Mashner is the third Slayer Master that you should have access to. It does require, and I do say it because it's a demon, it does require having a quest completed, Priest in Peril, in order to get access to him. There's no way around that, really. Well, actually, I guess you could possibly teleport over there with like a fairy ringer. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You're gonna need to get a quest done. Again, Priest in Peril is an iconic old quest, one of my favorite quests in the game. So it's really like not that hard to do. You can even do it on a level 3 count, as many people have before. It would require some skill, but basically, so for Mashner, I would say this is like the beginning or the end of the early game Slayer Masters and the beginning of the early mid game Slayer Masters. Mashner is going to start to assign you some new tasks, which is great. Also is going to have some tasks that are locked behind quests, 2 specifically to my knowledge. And Mashner is currently where I'm up to with my Iron Man, my SlayerLOCKED Iron Man. So things about Mashner is also the first to give you Slayer points, which is really a huge thing that just, again, I would encourage you as soon as you possibly can, you should really move on to Mashner over our 2 friends here, because Mashner is just going to start giving you Slayer points. You want to start bulking those up as soon as humanly possible. Priest in Peril is not a hard quest, and it also gives you access to an amazing area of the game, and just all around looks way cooler than these 2 buffoons. And so honestly, I'm going to say going to be in the basically mid tier, hands down, factoring in that, Mashner looks cool, that Mashner is insanely valuable, that they can start earning you Slayer points. Mashner is also just very well rounded with their tasks, none of them being too difficult. The ones that are ironically hated the most is the Killer Watts task, seems to get a lot of hate, which is you going to kill lightning. But this task really isn't that difficult, and you can also just completely avoid it by not completing the quest Ernest the Chicken. So definitely a good, basically mid-tier Slayer Master. All right, we are on to Vanica. So, man, love him, hate him. He's probably one of the more controversial but yet loved Slayer Masters on this list. He's so first off, you meet this dude on Tutorial Island, and basically as long as Tutorial Island has existed, this guy is the combat instructor that tells you to go kill the rats. He's a little sassy with it, hence why I even threw that quote out there on his intro page. And he's got a 2-handed sword. He's got a cool shield that, again, as a noob, you're like, man, how do I get these things? He's someone that you aspire to be. He even says, I'm the, the world's best swordsman alive, or so to speak. And a little bit more specific details on the guy is that, of course, he's the second Slayer Master to give us Slayer points. He gives us 4 per task. And, which again, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about this, is task intervals. So every time you complete a task, you're building that streak, right? And the longer you go with building your streak of completing successful tasks, or you use your Slayer points to skip a task or block a task, then you will eventually come to 10 tasks of a streak, 50, 100, and so on. And so he gives actually essentially double everything that Mashner gives as a Slayer Master. So if you feel up to him, he's theoretically twice as good with the Slayer points that you get. But again, we're not basing this whole list on just Slayer points or looks. If it was just on looks, he would certainly be ahead of Mashner. He could even be in the A tier. Notoriety and whatnot. People really love this guy. And I would say is that he does give you access to a ton of new monsters compared to all the other Slayer Masters on this list. And recently, in 2024, he actually had his list drastically overhauled and removed some of the more annoying tasks, including Earth Warriors, which were actually in the wilderness. So it's now way easier to do him compared to before as a beginner or a noob. And so it's funny because I would have considered him not really intro, but mid-tier Slayer Master. But honestly now, with these changes, I would say he is the 4th of these masters. He doesn't require any quests to access him, unlike Mashner and Spria. And other than the fact that, yeah, you obviously don't want to just run over to this guy the moment you hit the combat level to use him, because it might be a little challenging. But like beyond that, like I really think he's someone that's pretty well rounded. They've made him a lot better. Of course, we haven't even talked about his location yet, that he's located in Edgeville Dungeon. And so being in Edgeville Dungeon actually makes it like, I think that's a familiar area for most people, especially over maybe Mauritania, as you need access of that to be a member. And so all in all, like I would just say he's a good Slayer Master. Again, he's not amazing, he's not out of this world, but like he is a good overall intro. And so as long as you feel comfortable and you have a combat level of 40 or higher, I would say, yeah, he should be ranked above Mashner. And the last thing, too, is he at least has some interesting dialogue. These friends really well. Spear has a little bit, but, Mashner and Turiel doesn't. So I feel confident putting him at the top of our mid-tier ranking. And now let's move on to our next one. Alright, next up we have Chadler. So, a little bit about Chadler. She is for sure the beginning of the mid-game Slayer Masters, if you aren't already counting Vanica. Honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of her, so you can probably tell where I'm going to be putting her. So first off, she's in this special land, Xanaris, which is what you need access to with the Lost City quest. And so that is, again, like an early level quest that you really should complete. Like, this is a quest that everyone should be doing sooner rather than later. Super easy nowadays to get these things done with all the helpers and the plugins. But again, yeah, it is locked behind a quest. And so if you're like someone that just hates questing, you're like maybe, still getting familiar with this game, even though a combat level of 70 is required, like Chadler's one of those ones that you just may not first jump to do. But I would have to say that like she does have some good tasks. She does introduce you to a whole new portion of the game. And honestly, some of her tasks are really a major step up compared to everyone else at this point. So if you're trying to do Slayer and you are not like, not wanting to feel challenged, then maybe you will avoid going to her altogether. But if you don't mind feeling a little bit of a challengement, and you're just so tired of Vanica, then certainly you would want to step up to use her. The reason why like I could put her in S tier instantly is this next major point, is that fairy rings are something that comes from the extension of her quest line, or really I should say, the fairy quest line. You get access to these fairy rings after Fairy Tale Part 2, if I'm not mistaken. So it is a few quests further along in the quest line. But once you've already done a Lost City, if you meet the requirements, you should definitely consider looking into Fairy Tale. I think it's like Cura Queen is the full title of it. And I could throw up some of the requirements on the screen as well. But again, this is a guide on Slayer. This is a guide on just Slayer Masters in general, or just, a task list, I would say, not even a guide. And so, if you are factoring in that you are eventually going to get fairy rings, which you really should get as soon as you can, it makes this game so much easier. The travel is just amazing. Then, instant S tier. But fairy rings are not, locked behind her. It is just an extension of her quests. So I would say, I'm not going to include that in our final verdict here. If I was, and she'd just be S tier instantly. I love fairy rings. Everyone should get fairy rings. So next up is that her points do jump drastically compared to Vanica's, with 10 points every task, and then, 50 every 10 tasks. At 100 tasks every 250. So it is an amazing amount, again, compared to Vanica or Mashner. But it's one of those things, it's not as good as other people on this list. So I can't believe I'm going to say it, but I'm actually going to put her right here. Again, fairy rings, it'd be an instant S tier for me. But that's something that does require you to go a little bit further. I would encourage you guys to rush fairy rings as soon as possible. Her tasks are good. They're not, they're not terrible. Some are locked, again, behind quests such as the Fairy Tale to the, if you want to do Abyssal Demons, I believe. So definitely worth considering, but just not worth putting, I would say, with Mashner or with Vanica for how easy they are, and just for their overall availability and location, and Man, maybe. No, we're just gonna stick with right here. Sorry, Spear, right in front of you. All right, next. Okay, so after fixing the order between recordings, here we are with Crystalia. She is definitely a love-hate relationship for me, maybe for many of you. What makes her so unique is that she is the first Slayer Master on this list that locks you to one location, or specific locations, I should say, for Slayer. Every task she gives is in the wilderness. So what that means is that every single task she gives you, you are more or less going to be risking gear and your life to other players in order to complete your tasks. And so as such, she gives, in my opinion, some of the best GP per hour of any Slayer Master on this list. Experience is decent at times, but also why she is so just overall loved, hated, is that she actually has real dialogue. She is someone that has a wide variety of tasks. Also, and this is a huge point that does apply to other people on this list, but really is the beginning of this major point, is bossing. So there is many bosses located in the wilderness, and if you go and do them on a Slayer task and you have your Slayer helmet, you'll be doing additional damage to these Slayer monsters or these bosses. And so it is really just a great idea that once you start to feel comfortable, that if you go bossing and you are able to do it on a Slayer assignment, it is just going to make it so you are able to get even more GP per hour as you deal more damage. And also you can get your Lawrence keys, which, to again not get too far into it, it is a special loot table that is unique to the wilderness, and while on a Slayer task you have a greater chance to get one of these keys. They're not going to be game-changing gear, but it is going to for sure give you helpful gear, helpful resources, and just honestly increases your GP per hour, as compared to Vanica gives you a task to go kill scorpions, and it's going to be good, but you're not going to have an increased drop rate of these Lawrence keys. And so that's where she really does just shine. There's just so much that you can say about her. Also, it is bonkers the amount of points you get. You get 25 each per task, if I'm not mistaken, by saying that. So that is just a huge advantage and jump compared to really every other Slayer Master that we've talked to up until this point. Honestly, I would just say the biggest negative of this is that actually too, so you don't need any specific Slayer level or combat level to go and access her. So if you wanted to, right away, you can start Slayer off by going to Crystalia, and it's a fun idea, but it's just gonna be probably a bad one, because you're gonna be going out of the wilderness, you're gonna be underprepared, and I would just say never go into the wilderness and bring anything that you're not willing to lose. And again, if you're going to be doing for this guide, again, is very much just new friendly, beginner friendly. I hope it's not an over the top guide, but I just do want to cover points that you want to focus on bringing lower tier gear that is still going to add protections. Later on into the game, for example, bringing black, dragon hide armor, that's going to protect you against magic, and it's going to give you protection against range. And so it's a cheap, insanely affordable armor that is safe for you to bring out, or maybe you're even bringing dragon armor out for melee, for example, although a little bit more expensive, obviously. But it's you don't want to be bringing your bandos out here as compared to other Slayer Masters. So just unless you are very confident with your ability to escape and for PK and whatnot. So I know that's a big negative that I have shared there, but I really do mean it. Oh, and I can't believe I almost missed this. Obviously we talked about the Lawrence keys, but she actually has her own Slayer task list as well. So it is completely separate from everyone else on this list, or a streak list. So if you are 55 long into your streak, but then you start going to her, it's going to be completely separate. So it's good and bad. It's bad that you're not building your overall streak, but it's nice that once you have finished one of these tasks and you go and start with her, it's a way that you can not worry about resetting her task and not messing up your overall list, if that makes sense. So like, it's a nice feature, it's a weird feature, it's like one that I wouldn't be surprised if they even just did away with it one day. I guess I can't fully understand why it's in the game, but I do understand some benefits that people have seen in it. And yeah, so I would just say, like, it adds, honestly, like, another major thing, and then I'll shut up about her, is that, like, compared to RuneScape 3, which is my background, the Wilderness is all but dead, you know? It's just dead content. PKing is dead content. Mini games are dead content, really, in that game. It's kind of sad, but PKing and Wilderness is still certainly alive. Jagex has done a great job at making sure that the Wilderness still has that fear, at least for me, as it did when I was a kid. And so maybe it will for you too. And so if you're worried, like, you know, skip her. You don't need to do her. But if you start to feel confident with the game, you start to understand, like, hey, what I bring, I might lose it. You know, you bring easy escape teleports that can work out, you know, in 30 Wilderness or less. It's that she, honestly, just in my opinion, and I know that's a controversial one, deserves to be in the S tier. So I look forward to hearing what all y'all say on it. Obviously, she even has access to Revenants, which is just one of the best money makers. Like, you just go look up any Revenant guide, you'll just see that that is just amazing money. And then being on a Slayer task just makes it even more. So there's so much to be said about her. But I really would just say that once you start to feel comfortable, once you start to understand that you bring some gear you don't mind losing, not your very best gear, but maybe some gear slightly below it, she is extremely worth your time. And I would encourage it, even if you're terrified of the Wilderness, to just start to experiment and see what it feels to use her as your Slayer Master. Oh, very, very last point. You can even change your respawn point to Edgeville with her for only 5 mil. So as a noob, as a beginner, that might seem like craziness, but nowadays that's not even a full price of a bond, and it will just save you so much time being able to get back to her so easily if you ever did die. It's even if you just die not to a player, then you just respawn there, and now you can easily run to anywhere in the Wilderness within 15 minutes to get your gravestone. So anyway, that's about all enough about her. Let's move on. Okay, next up we have our girl Konar. So, Konar, maybe you're like me and you're coming from RuneScape 3 and you're like, who the hell is this? Or what is this? She's some blue looking, you know, monster. Anyway, Konar could be said to be one of the best things to have happened to OSRS Slayer. From my limited knowledge and experience of her on my main, she is very, very fascinating. She takes what our girl Crystalia has and takes it to a whole nother level. She is the only Slayer Master that, when assigned a task, will give you a specific location that you must go to in order to kill that monster. And some of them can be very unique, challenging, hard to get to. Again, this is coming from a guy that didn't even know anything about her whole continent that she's on. So, like, you know, take it with a grain of salt. But if you are watching this again, hopefully as a, you know, intro beginner's understanding of Slayer and the Slayer Masters, so that is a big, like, negative to maybe hold her back. But I would also say it's the biggest positive, that as you become familiar with the game, she has a combat level of 75 that is required. And so that alone, too, is like, it doesn't mean you're, again, unless you're killing sand crabs because some YouTube video told you to do it, you are hopefully going to be at least more familiar with the game at level 75 than maybe you were, like, as a kid at level 75. So hopefully you're going to start to have understanding. You've been over to you know, her region, you are just a little bit more familiar with her. So, like, I would say, like, don't let it deter you by the idea that you have to travel all around Gielinor to do her tasks. And what I would say is that she's never going to assign you a task that you don't have access to. So that's a huge thing that is worth factoring in there as well. And I would say is, like, also, I guess, a drawback, because some of her tasks will then be locked behind you not having access to them. So that's something to consider. One of the biggest things, hands down, and I guess I kind of already made this point with Crystalia, is that bossing, again, from, like, here on out is definitely common. One master among these three is certainly better than the others, but she does have access and is the only one that has access to Hydras. Hydras is one of the best money makers in the game when it comes to Slayer and bossing. It might actually be still the best if I'm not mistaken. And so this is really like what you strive to do. It's something that didn't, again, exist back in the day, something that they've added that is very fun. It's a way to have like challenging content that, again, is not like, you know, easy walk-in, you can just do it, but it's obviously not like a raid either. So I would say for all in all purposes, I'm gonna have to put her, I think, in the A's. She's obviously better than Vanica, and better than like Mashner, and she is someone that is very fun. But if you're someone that just hates getting assigned specific locations to go to, then you might put her like all the way down in C, and I would totally understand that. For me, I would say once you are at the levels to use her, maybe a little bit after, which is 75 combat, you should really give her a shot, especially as you're getting more and more comfortable with the game. And that's just the thing, it's going to encourage you to go beyond just maybe, you know, the wilderness, or just beyond areas that you're already familiar with. It does encourage, she also encourages you to do more quests, to get access to more different types of monsters, including Song of the Elves, which is like just iconic and certainly worth doing. And then obviously, yes, is that she does give you a buttload of points, 18 on her own, but if you complete diaries, you can get even more, up to 20 per task. But again, that's something that I think most, intro people aren't going to fully understand. And maybe down the road one day, if you guys actually like this video, because I know this is going to be on the longer side, I'll make a video explaining like diaries and their benefits. But I would honestly say you're going to find much better explanations of even how to do them, all available online. And yeah, I would just say that she deserves her spot in A. But now for these last two. Let's see. So let's just go right down to our girl, Neve or Steve. So this is actually really cool to explain. Is that, first off, I would just say when it comes to like iconic, you know, this girl is one person that I think everyone associates, not with RuneScape, but with OSRS. She is someone that is right up there with maybe the Wise Old Man is just recognized. You can see her on a lot of people's merch and whatnot. And it's crazy that come a certain quest, I would say just it's a spoiler warning, but it's fine, because unless you guys are like crazy about the lore, maybe like myself, that yeah, she is actually gonna die. And then she will be replaced with Steve, hence why you find a lot of references to this Neve/Steve. It's not like anything crazy, it's just the fact that, yeah, she gets replaced, not that something else happens. And so, what I would say is that, generally speaking, for her, she gives tasks that are worth 12 to 15 points depending on the diaries if you've completed them. She gives tasks that are much more easier to get to as compared to Konar. Her tasks are, I would actually say, better experience, generally speaking, but I would say that they're less money. And oh my gosh, how do we not even say that? So sorry. Is that Brimstone keys. She has Brimstone keys, so the only two people that give you keys, which are just quite literally extra money at this point. If you're a main, you can sell them, you can open them, and it's just a very easy way to get extra cash. And so that's why these are two of the best money makers. Even though these two are later on, I would honestly say if you're trying to make money, Cristelia or Konar, like, they're both very good. And like, even for that reason alone, you might make the argument, well, why does Cristelia get the top tier? I would just say for easier access, you are obviously exploring the wilderness, but you're not exploring the whole bloody world, which can be annoying at times. And so yeah, our last two Slayer Masters, they don't have access to these keys. They're not like geared around earning keys. They really are meant to help you get better experience quicker, again, give you access to new monsters that maybe you haven't had before, and give you new challenges, certainly. I do generally like Neve's location, that she's in the Grand Tree. Again, maybe this is just me as a guy who did a lot of woodcutting as a kid, but like that was one of those areas that was just familiar enough. I knew how to get to it. You got the Grand Tree quest line, which again, just like our fairy rings, gives you easy access all around. But again, I'm not fully factoring that in here because although that is something that is associated with Neve's location, it's not to her specifically, or else again, like I would say that would have to move her and Chandler up higher. So I'm gonna put her in A, but I think she does in fact deserve to be behind Konar. Konar does deserve to be number 1 in the amazing tier. All right, so finally, last, we have the man, Duradil. A lot can be said about this guy. Really cool dude. Let's see. I could be wrong. I think in his immediate future, he might also be meeting his end. I wouldn't be surprised if these two guys, or one of them, isn't here by the end of the next major quest or so in OSRS's history. Again, if you're watching this later on into 2024 or even 2025 and beyond, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. You're gonna probably be laughing because like none of them died, or maybe something crazy happened like Mashner died, I don't even care if they maybe did kill Mashner off. Like, man, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So, Duradil is located in Shiloh Village. Shiloh Village requires the Shiloh Village quest to get access to. At this point, like, hopefully you're feeling confident enough and to understand that, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5. So at 5 of all these masters require some form of quests completed in order to access them. And so it's something that's a part of Slayer. It's a part of this game in general. And again, questing in OSRS, for again, assuming you are a beginner watching this video, it really is worth doing. I hated it as a kid. Maybe you hate it now. It's so easy to do with the Quest Helper plugin. It's so easy to do just even asking someone, watching guides, whatever you need to do. And it's fun. Like, it's amazing dialogue. It's worth it because it gives you access to, can you imagine completing Slayer with only half of these people having access to them? Like, so many of these skills just evolve and grow by you questing. And so this is my short little pitch and spiel that, Duradil is obviously going all the way up in our S tier, but I'm just not sure yet if we're going to go behind or in front. We're going to put behind for a second, but here's why. Here's what I'm thinking. Duradil, hands down, I would say, gives you the best experience per hour, generally speaking, and is just, again, like, obviously is the last of the Slayer Masters, so you would understand that and expect that. I would say that, maybe not the easiest to get to compared to other people on this list, but again, at this point, you should probably have access to more teleports. There's the Kararama gloves. I think it has to be tier 3 or 4, but those even just allow you to then teleport directly to the guy. Lunar Spellbook has access to the ability for you to talk to all of these people once you've met them, and so makes it really easy to save you the trouble and hassle of running to them. There's many ways. So at this point in the game, like, if this was the first Slayer Master located in Shiloh Village, I would laugh and put him in F tier, even though he looks sick, even though he's the guy that sells you the cape. But at this point in the game, you really should know or feel comfortable to get to him. Again, this is like your very last master. There's no way that you're skipping over all these people and just starting with him. And also, I guess that being said, that he's also the best person, generally speaking, for bossing tasks. It's just the weighting of his tasks and overall availability makes him just a very well-rounded, amazing master that, again, you can still make great money with him. Also, generally speaking, cannoning is just like very preferred with him or with Steve compared to other people on this list. And so I would just say, like, Duradil, really good dude, might not be with us much longer because in RuneScape 3 he's gonna pass on. And even the fairy ring is a great way to get access to him, giving you 15 Slayer points per normal task. Rather big bonuses. I guess not as big as, Konar and Cristelia, so I think I feel comfortable with him being number 2 on our list. Anyway, as I'm drawing this to a close, you guys, for everyone who's made it this far, thank you so much. Every like, every subscriber, whatever. It really helps. It really does motivate me. And yeah, let me know, like, what would you change to this? Maybe say in the comments your order from top to bottom of Slayer Masters. I'm not sold on this per se, and I certainly know that many of you watching this could be more experienced than me, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. And this is just me making this video a little different from our series, because I just want to say thank you to all of you who helped us get to this point. And I think down the road, yeah, we'll try other fun, creative ideas like this as a way to just, say thank you, to encourage discussion. And anyway, I want to say God bless. Thank you for joining us. Can't wait to hear what y'all have to say, and can't wait to get back to our Slayer Lock journey. Have a good one. Bye-bye.